Like, we will not be able to be smarter than a digital supercomputer. So therefore, if you cannot beat them, join them. AI and robotics will bring out what might be termed the age of abundance. Other people have used this word. The long-term aspiration for Neuralink would be to achieve a symbiosis with artificial intelligence, and to achieve a sort of democratization of intelligence, such that it is not monopolistically held in a purely digital form by governments and large corporations.
Basically, an effort for man to merge with machine in a healthy way.
Yes.
To beat machines, you basically have to merge with machines.
Most likely, yes. Essentially, how do we ensure that the future constitutes the sum of the will of humanity? And so if we have billions of people with the high bandwidth link to the AI extension of themselves, it would actually make everyone hyper smart.
Okay, so
this is very esoteric.
Yeah, no, but you say this is more psi than phi, so you believe we're headed this way.
I believe this can be done.
When will I be able to get the interface implant?
It's probably on the order of a decade. And by the way, you kind of have this already in a weird way, in that you have a digital tertiary layer in the form of your phone, your computers. You basically have these computing devices that form a tertiary layer on your cognition already. Along the way, Neuralink is going to help solve a lot of nerve problems. Like, so, in fact, we're just talking about, okay, what would it take to really solve for spinal cord injuries? We already know how to do this. Implant electrodes into the motor cortex of the brain, and then bypass the severed section of the spine and have effectively local microcontrollers near the muscle groups. It could restore full limb functionality. Very exciting what can be done here. And then just memory. Like, as people get older, they lose their memory. As I was saying, it's incredibly sad when a mother forgets her own children, and that can be solved too.
I think that the brain-computer interface is extremely important for essentially achieving symbiosis with AI, because we're input-output limited. We're effectively a cyborg right now, where your phone or computer is an extension of yourself, but your input is bounded by the screen, and your output is bounded by your thumbs or fingers. So effectively, over time, we would drift away from a machine intelligence, have a high bandwidth neural interface, then we can solve the I/O problem and go along for the ride symbiotically. Just as our cortex and our limbic system are quite happy together, and I've not met anyone who wants to delete their cortex or their limbic system, even though the cortex is in principle much, much smarter than the limbic system. And mostly the cortex is trying to make the limbic system happy.
We currently understand very little about the human brain. Do you also hope that the work at Neuralink will help us understand more about the human mind, about the brain?
Yeah, I think the work in Neuralink will definitely shed a lot of insight into how the brain and the mind works. Right now, just the data we have regarding how the brain works is very limited. We've got fMRI, which is that's kind of like putting a stethoscope on the outside of a factory wall, and then putting it like all over the factory wall, and you can sort of hear the sounds, but you don't know what the machines are doing, really. It's hard. You can infer a few things, but it's a very broad brushstroke. In order to really know what's going on in the brain, you have to have high precision sensors, and then you want to have stimulus and response. Like, if you trigger a neuron, how do you feel? What do you see? How does it change your perception of the world?
You're speaking to physically, just getting close to the brain, being able to measure signals from the brain, will give us sort of open the door inside the factory.
Yes, exactly. Being able to have high precision sensors that tell you what individual neurons are doing, and then being able to trigger the neuron and see what the response is in the brain. So you can see the consequences of a, if you fire this neuron, what happens? How do you feel? What does it change? It'll be really profound to have this in people, because people can articulate their change, like if there's a change in mood, or if they can tell you if they can see better or hear better, or be able to form sentences better or worse, or their memories are jogged, or that kind of thing.
What is the most exciting, or some of the most exciting things that you see in the future impact of Neuralink, both on the science, the engineering, and societal broad impact?
So Neuralink, I think, at first will solve a lot of brain-related diseases. So it could be anything from like autism, schizophrenia, memory loss. Like everyone experiences memory loss at certain points in age. Parents can't remember their kids' names and that kind of thing. So there's, I think, a tremendous amount of good that Neuralink can do in solving critical damage to brain or the spinal cord. There's a lot that can be done to improve quality of life of individuals, and those will be steps along the way. And then ultimately, it's intended to address the existential risk associated with digital superintelligence. Like, we will not be able to be smarter than a digital supercomputer. So therefore, if you cannot beat them, join them. And at least we won't have that option. Yeah, I think it's like fundamentally good, giving somebody back full motor control after they've had a spinal cord injury, restoring brain functionality after a stroke, solving debilitating genetically oriented brain diseases. These are all incredibly great, I think. And in order to do these, you have to be able to interface with the neurons at a detailed level, and you need to be able to fire the right neurons, read the right neurons, and then effectively you can create a circuit, replace what's broken with silicon, and essentially fill in the missing functionality. And then over time, we develop a tertiary layer. So if like the limbic system is the primary layer, then the cortex is like the second layer. And as I said, obviously the cortex is vastly more intelligent than the limbic system. It's important that Neuralink solve this problem sooner rather than later, because the point at which we have digital superintelligence, that's when we pass to singularity, and things become just very uncertain. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily bad or good, but the point at which we pass singularity, things become extremely unstable. So we want to have a human-brain interface before the singularity, or at least not long after it, to minimize existential risk for humanity and consciousness as we know it. AI and robotics will bring out what might be termed the age of abundance. Other people have used this word, and that this is my prediction. It'll be an age of abundance for everyone. I guess there's the dangers would be the artificial general intelligence or digital superintelligence decouples from a collective human will and goes in a direction that for some reason we don't like, of whatever direction it might go. That's sort of the idea behind Neuralink, is to try to more tightly couple collective human will to digital superintelligence, and also along the way solve a lot of brain injuries and spinal injuries and that kind of thing. So even if it doesn't succeed in the greater goal, I think it will succeed in the goal of alleviating brain and spine damage. The way to think of the Neuralink device is kind of like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch that's where we take out a sort of a small section of skull about the size of a quarter, replace that with what in many ways really is very much like a Fitbit, Apple Watch, or some kind of smartwatch thing, but with tiny wires, very, very tiny wires, wires so tiny it's hard to even see them. And it's very important to have very tiny wires so that you, when they're implanted, they don't damage the brain.
How far are you from putting these into humans?
Well, we have put in our FDA application to have the aspirationally do the first human implant this year.
The first uses will be for neurological injuries of different kinds.
Yes.
But rolling the clock forward and imagining when people are actually using these for their own enhancement, let's say, and for the enhancement of the world, how clear are you in your mind as to what it will feel like to have one of these inside your head?
Well, I do want to emphasize we're at an early stage, and so it really will be many years before we have anything approximating a high bandwidth neural interface that allows for AI-human symbiosis. And for many years, we will just be solving brain injuries and spinal injuries for probably a decade.
But your project Neuralink is in a way empowering human intelligence versus artificial intelligence. That's the purpose of it. Is that correct?
Yeah. So Neuralink, in the short to medium term, Neuralink is really just going to help cure brain injuries and brain and spine injuries. So it's like if somebody is in fact, our first implanted devices in humans will be for quadriplegics, tetraplegics, allowing them to control a computer or a phone just using their mind. So like you can imagine, like if Stephen Hawking could just talk. Well, yeah, I mean, Neuralink, in the short term, Neuralink is just about solving, brain injuries and spinal injuries and that kind of thing. So to be clear, for many years, Neuralink's products will just be helpful to someone who has lost the use of their arms and legs, or who has just a traumatic brain injury of some kind. That's what Neuralink will be useful for many years.
But in our last conversation, you said that Neuralink is among all your projects, for you, the most important one. Is that still true?
I know I said it could be. I wouldn't say for sure it is the most important, but it could be the most important in that there is a long-term mitigation to artificial intelligence, which is that we could effectively merge with artificial intelligence by improving the speed of interaction between our cortex and our tertiary layer, which is already silicon. We're already a sort of a three-level intelligence creature.
We do want a close coupling between collective human intelligence and digital intelligence. Neuralink is trying to help in that regard by creating an interface between a high bandwidth interface between AI and human brain. We're already a cyborg in the sense that your phone and your computer are kind of an extension of you.
Just low bandwidth input output. Right?
Exactly, it's just low bandwidth, particularly output. I mean, 2 thumbs basically.
I mean, the full story of Neuralink is quite complicated. The overarching goal with Neuralink is to mitigate the AI control risk, so that as AI gets smarter and smarter, we need to do something to enhance the bandwidth between ourselves and the machine extension of ourselves. Like, we are already a cyborg to some degree, in that our phones and our laptops and our computer applications are an extension of ourselves. But the bandwidth to the computers, especially to the phone, is very slow, where we essentially are outputting with thumbs, 2 slow-moving thumbs. This is a very low bandwidth situation. So I think from an existential threat standpoint, Neuralink is aimed at improving human-machine symbiosis, with the idea of ensuring that humanity can have a good coexistence with artificial intelligence. Now, in the short term, over the next several years, Neuralink will attempt to solve a number of brain injuries and brain diseases. So our first application, for example, is to enable someone who is a quadriplegic or tetraplegic to be able to control their computer or their phone just by thinking. And we've already demonstrated this actually with a monkey that can play video games and use a mouse cursor and click on things on a computer. And so we're very confident this will work. And hopefully we'll have our first human trials in the next 6 months or so.